Okay, we're back. Stephen, let me ask you a question. Congressman Paul brought up the whole idea of medical marijuana. What is your response to that? People have glaucoma, they're nauseous from anti-cancer drugs. What do you say to that?
Well, again, there is, not a whole lot of research to back up the fact that there aren't alternatives even to that. There's lots of pain relieving practices that people can study. So I must say that, to be honest with you, Joy, when in fact there are people for those reasons that do have success with it, then if prescribed under a controlled situation, then yes, obviously that makes a lot of sense. But back to Mr. Paul's statement about, the addictive aspects of smoking cigarettes. Obviously, if I smoke a cigarette, I'm not going to get in my vehicle and be impaired potentially to damage somebody else's life. If we legalize marijuana, there's no question that the number of deaths related to people being impaired under the influence of marijuana is going to increase. The question is, just to be able to tax it, is it worth it? That's the question.
Rob, what do you say to that?
Well, I understand there's a few people who smoke marijuana already. And how many times have you seen somebody arrested for driving under the influence of marijuana? I mean, I've never even heard of it. Driving under the influence of alcohol, that is dangerous. But people shouldn't do that, and they should be responsible. But you can't get more people smoking marijuana. It's just that what is so bad is the war on marijuana, putting people in prison. They can be caught using drugs for the third time, never committing a violent act, and putting them in prison for life. And yet rapists and murderers can get out. And if you think of all that expenses, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that get spent on this. And people usually who get sent to prison for nonviolent drug use come out as violent criminals. So it makes no sense at all to pursue this method, because marijuana is not going to increase car accidents. Let me tell you, that is not the case.
I would think that it's hard to detect if you're high on marijuana when you're pulled over by the police. There's no breathalyzer test. So how would we know what effect it has?
Well, but
Go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead, Mr. Paul. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, that's a possibility, but even under today's circumstances, nobody gets arrested for it. And the alcohol is the real culprit and the real problem. And yet we have people in Washington, D.C. who drink a lot of alcohol, let me tell you, because of political reasons. They're scared to death to vote to legalize the growing of hemp. Hemp has nothing to do with smoking marijuana. And because of this obsession on the drug war, we can't grow hemp in this country. We send the hemp growing up to Canada, then we buy the products that we make from hemp. So we export our jobs to Canada. Hemp is a good product that we prohibit from being used, and it was legal up until even after World War II. We were allowed to raise hemp in this country. This is how hysterical this war on drugs has gotten. So the sooner we come to this realization, someday, actually, I'm optimistic about this. I think this country is going to wake up like they did in the 30s and say, hey, prohibition didn't work. Alcohol's a horror. It's made things worse. It's caused a lot of crime and a lot of violence. It's about time we just do this. Get rid of the prohibition. Let the regulation go back to the state. Regulate it like alcohol. And with the real regulation come from the individual and also from the family and the parents and the community. That's what prevents drug use, not some federal thug coming in with guns and arresting some kid and throwing him in prison for life. That makes no sense whatsoever.